This presentation will briefly cover Chapter 16 and Chapter 18 in McLuhan. The first chapter will be that of Chapter 16, which is titled The Print, How to Dig It. A brief overview of the chapter finds McLuhan presents the reader with a telling of print development and the path of evolution before Gutenberg's movable print development. I will talk about both of those in my presentation. The purpose of print media for mankind in the history of medieval civilization to the advantage of society during the time of our author, McLuhan. An analysis of print from hot to cold. So McLuhan starts both chapters, and I'm not sure, maybe he starts all chapters, but he started both chapters with a small story. And chapter 16, he started with a telling of maps. They were historically printed. Maps of locations were top secret and hidden. And this prompted the black market to sell maps, and these maps were given, significant value. From this, McLuhan gives an indication that the Western world has forgotten that without prints or without geographical mapping, modern science would not have its current existence. The Western world has constantly been dependent on the visual format, and that is evident today, and it was evident in McLuhan's time as he spoke of television. There's a heavy emphasis on words lacking the ability to truly provide a description of any object or event. I did read his telling of a bucket that he believes there's no way of wording to describe the real image of a bucket. That is, something that I had a little mixed reaction to that. But with the fact that we have an emphasis, the Western culture has an emphasis on words, and they have a lack of the ability, according to McLuhan. This prompts us to be fixated on the visual world. So now we get into a real main feature of chapter 16, and McLuhan goes into his thoughts, his telling, his information. He provides historical background to what is to these forms of print, and one of them is woodcut. And McLuhan identifies that before Gutenberg's printing technology, that a great deal of printing on paper by woodcut was done. Woodcut, so the woodcut is the oldest form of printmaking, and the process included the use of knives and other tools to carve a design into wood. He describes the art of woodcutting as eagerly seized upon as a means of imparting information. Wood carving, again, McLuhan refers to it as, he describes it as a clumsy metaphor ascribed to our language. Wood carving is a revelation in the language, namely that words cannot bear sharp definition in daily use. The most popular form of this woodcutting is block print of text, not to be confused with block print in APA format. An image is Biblia Pauperum, the Bibles of the Poor. And I have a picture of that and just above woodcutting. Oh, just a real quick clarification that the images I have provided are not the heart of the works. I will give proper reference to those images, but I'm not in any kind of copyright infringement. Woodcutting, though popular and cheap, was despised by the learned, hence they were not preserved anymore. And McLuhan compares them to comic books. So now we switch to typography. McLuhan mentions that there was no real clear indication as to when typography replaced woodcutting. Just, again, the introduction of Gutenberg and the printing technology, but he found or declared in his writing that there was no indication as to when it was replaced. The message of print and typography is that of repeatability, and that print was eagerly seized upon as a means of imparting information. Whether that is a strength or a weakness, we will talk about that just briefly and when we view the images or the mediums of hot and cold. So in defining what is determined as hot and cold in this chapter, in chapter 16, there are a few things that McLuhan states. For example, he stated extending just the definition of what is cold and what is hot. So hot being extending a sense of high definition. McLuhan indicated that it is well filled with data. If we are talking about cold mediums, low definition, and there is allowing for more audience interpretation. So in chapter 16, the old prints, such as the woodcuts, which are similar to, again, comic books, in that they provide very little data about a particular time or event or object. Because of this, the reader is compelled to complete or participate in molding what is given within the particular lines of boundary set in the woodcut or comic book. A visual image, such as the television, has a very low degree of objects and a very high degree of participation from the viewer. And McLuhan stated that if the cold medium involves the viewer a great deal, the hot medium will not. And he further stated that typography is a hot medium in that it involves the reader more than the manuscript, and that comic book, television, wood cutting are cold in that they involve the user as maker and participant. And now in chapter 18, we will cover the printed word, the architect of nationalism. Another brief overview of this chapter, chapter 18. For us to understand print, McLuhan feels that we need to stand aside of questioning so that we are able to understand the print has its typical pressure and life. The typographic explosion expanded the minds and voices of men to reconstitute the human dialogue on a world scale to bridge the ages. And he also covers typography as a psychic and social, the consequences that suddenly shifted previous boundaries and patterns of our culture. As we know, McLuhan is known for the statement, the medium is the message. And in chapter 18, he writes about the medium of the alphabet having a sort of electricity that our species places, which makes sense, a heavy emphasis on words, and that this visual fixation that we have controls Western society and still controls it today. McLuhan shared print releases to the author great psychic energies for the writer or artist of the medium to cultivate a self-expression. And in attaching to the medium, the author can use an energy to separate thought and feeling. And this energy to separate thought and feeling provides the medium an ability to split literate man out of the tribal world. As he wrapped up chapter 18, McLuhan wrote, "The most potent gift from typography and literacy given to the Western man is his power to act without reaction or involvement."